Welcome back. Let's talk about the country's supplementary budget, which is generating a lot of controversy. Now, the parliament has passed President Tinubu's supplementary budget of 2.176 trillion naira. However, some line items in the budget have generated widespread criticism. They include 1.5 billion naira now for the office of the First Lady and 5 billion naira for the purchase of presidential yachts, 2.9 billion naira for the purchase of SUVs, 4 billion naira for the renovation of presidential quarters of the president, and 2.5 billion for the vice president's residential quarters now. Now, in passing the budget, though, the Senate and House of Representatives moved the 5 billion naira for the presidential yacht now to a student education loan to bring the total for that loan now, which is, of course, meant for tertiary institutions, to 10 billion naira. But the Senate, of course, we just have to wait and okay, that's exactly what happened. So, but there are still controversies or criticism now over those specific line items of the budget that I just mentioned. Joining me to discuss the supplementary budget further now is senior researcher and policy analyst at Budget, Bayala Kwaga. Thank you very much, Mr. Kwaga, for joining us on the program. Not a surprise that the budget would generate the kind of criticism we have seen, especially when you consider some of the line items in the budget now, like the issue of the presidential yacht. But other than that, what other issues would you have about the supplementary budget?
Hi, DG. Thank you so much for having me. I guess for me, there are several of what I would like to call red flags. My organization has published a set of infographics that basically show Nigerians the components of this supplementary budget. So please, if you're not following us on social media, Twitter and Facebook, I would kindly ask that you do so. So in particular, we have renovations of, the offices and the homes, the quarters of the president and the vice president, which is, valued at very, very high amounts. And of course, the allocations for the vehicles. Another very interesting thing that I saw was the allocation for, agricultural inputs. And if you recall, President Tinubu had actually made it very clear in his manifesto, and also after he was inaugurated as president, that he would really go after agriculture. And there is substantial allocation to agricultural inputs in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. What I find interesting is, what is going to become of this allocation? And it is very, very reminiscent of the zonal intervention projects that we often see littered in every single budget, that has been made public, for the past few years. And what we tend to see is that zonal intervention projects are basically constituency projects for the members of the National Assembly, and they use them as they see fit. In addition, quite interesting is the number of the amount of allocation for the repair of roads and road infrastructure. Again, very, very insightful. Again, another thing that he has actually made very clear in his manifesto and even after joining government. And, if you calculate the total amount, it's running into about 500, I think 600 billion. So, those are some of the interesting things that I've seen in the supplementary budget so far.
Now, one question I want to ask you, and I don't know if it's something you're thinking about. Well, this supplementary budget is coming just towards the end of the year. The year is almost gone. I know, of course, that, look, the budget cycle can still continue. I'm talking about the supplementary budget now, but there's no question too that very soon the executive, and if they have not started doing so, they would start working on the 2024 budget, which of course is different from this. I'm just wondering, what do you make of the timing of this supplementary budget, considering that, look, we're almost at the end of the year?
I mean, that's a great question, and it has been something that's been on my mind, and I think rightly so, and also on the minds of millions of Nigerians. We were able to transit to a more predictable and more timely budget cycle with President Buhari, I think in his final 3 years. And I think that was an important milestone in terms of the effectiveness and the predictability of the government budgeting cycle. It was a hard-fought battle, but Buhari was able to maintain, some level of regularity. Looking at a supplementary budget, coming in basically at the twilight of the year, of the fiscal year, it is very, very concerning that, I mean, yes, we do have a budget circular, that came out, I think, last week, but the actual budget itself, being presented, being sent to the National Assembly, being sent back to the president for assent, the presidency will also have to review. I am not optimistic that we will be able to pass this budget in record time. And why do I say so? Unlike this supplementary budget, which, by the way, was passed in ways that I would like to call
quite
somewhat
speedily,
clandestine, because there was basically no input from the public. There was no input, from civil society. And it was basically done in a couple of days, both House and the Senate. So the actual 2024 budget itself will there has to be some input from civil society. Are we going to be kept out in the dark, the same way this supplementary budget had been passed? That as well is a problem, so either way, it's a very worrying situation going forward. This is not to talk of the impact on the medium-term expenditure framework projections for 2023 that came out, in 2022 and 2021. There was a calculation of the size of the budget deficit. And as you are aware, we are still in the 2023 fiscal year. So that means the deficit, has actually increased, because the 2023 total budget size is being expanded by this supplementary budget. And, as you are aware, this is being funded by borrowings. Already the World Bank, is giving Nigeria an upward of, I think, about 100 million naira, billions of dollars, sorry. And that is going to add to Nigeria's existing deficit. So what will that say for Nigeria's balance sheet at the end of the 2023 fiscal year? These are just some of the very serious concerns that a lot of us have.
What do you make of the decision of the Senate and the House, of course, to transfer that budget for the controversial presidential yacht now to the education loan? And by the way, there's been further explanation now on the budget for that presidential yacht, that look, approval had been given, the yacht had been bought and delivered, but was actually not paid for, and that it was really not that expensive, but that the whole thing was just caught up in this volatility in the forex market, and that's why you have this high figure for it, and you have the high figure too for some of these SUVs and all of that. But what do you make of the decision now to transfer that huge chunk of fund now to the education loan? That's the budget for student education loan.
I mean, it's actually a very interesting move. I see it more as a face-saving device. I mean, for what it's worth, you passed a budget, of monumental proportion in a few days with zero input from the public. I think that smacks of a serious lack of accountability. And I'm afraid for what the future will look like for the general public in terms of its engagement with the government budgeting cycle, and for civil society as well, if something as important as this, something that really speaks to the fortunes and livelihoods of Nigerians going forward, is basically being passed in a hush-hush manner. To speak to the issue of the Student Trust Fund, again, I'm also very concerned with the transparency and accountability of the entire process. With the exception of the TET Fund, I'm not sure of interventions like this that have been carried out with a high level of transparency, with a high regard for feedback from, the general public, and of course, civil society organizations that are engaged in the education sector. So one is really at a loss to what this will end up being. I mean, yes, the National Assembly has, rightfully allocated monies, which, by the way, I suspect they did so because of the public backlash.
but it's still something
yeah,
positive anyway.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just said it's still something positive. I mean, at least they listen to the public anyway.
Yes, I mean that's taken very, very well. I think it's important that at least they can see that Nigerian citizens are very concerned and are watching. Looking at the second issue that you raised around the, sorry, could you repeat the second question?
Yes, of course, it still has to do with the transfer of this fund now, the fund meant for the yacht. And I did talk about, okay, now I did talk about the issue of, some of these budget line items now caught up in this volatility in the forex market. And that probably could explain why you have seemingly huge budgets now for the SUVs, for instance, for some of those items budgeted for. When you consider the fact, because it's been explained that at some point, the budget was prepared, considering that the exchange rate would be 400 and something, but then it shot up to over 800, and we know what it is now, even at the official market rate. So that could probably be one of the reasons why you have these huge figures now for some of these items.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that. I would like to maybe take an unpopular position and say that I am not entirely convinced as to the justification for the purchase in the first place. For one, I guess Nigerians are entitled to see evidence of this purchase. If it is a public expense, the public deserves to know just how this process was arrived at. Mind you, there was already a supplementary budget or an extension of the 2022 financial year into 2023. So where is the paper trail? What was the procurement like? Yes, there has been a huge jump, in terms of the exchange rates. And, it's interesting that you bring up the forex volatility. By the singular act of declaring Nigeria's official exchange rates to be 700 naira to the dollar, our total debt increased by over 300 billion naira. So, I mean, who is going to pay for that? I'm not sure it's government officials that are trying to justify the purchase of a luxury good. I mean, I'm sure that I join a lot of Nigerians in struggling to reconcile the justification for this purchase. And I think it's something that should have been removed entirely. So, looking at what the future holds for Nigeria, revenues are likely to decline, and, deficit spending is already increasing. Should this be the context in which a purchase like this is being justified? I do not think so.
And you don't expect the parliament now to remove that line item for the purchase of vehicles when the lawmakers too actually want to buy similar vehicles for themselves as well. And that issue is also generating another round of controversy.
Yes, I mean, Nigeria, for what it's worth, we operate a system not of checks of balances, but of scratch my back and I scratch your back. I think the only arm of government that really is not part of this debacle is the judiciary. And of course, I'll reserve my comments since that is not within the scope of this discussion. But yes, I mean, there is a quid pro quo, as you alluded to in your comments, that the National Assembly would definitely want to make sure happens. So I do not see anything in terms of removal of those items. My concern really now is the 2024 budget and what that process will be like. Will civil society, will the media and the public be carried along as we ought to be? For a lot of people, President Tinubu represents, in quotes, Nigeria's first true political, a politician, a leader, a president from the actual political class. So what is he going to do with his first budget, of his term?
That's it. That's his first full budget, of course. Viola Kwaga, thank you very much for joining us on the program, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, DG.
Thank you. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the president of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.